Hi. Uh, Actually, this video is being released for three important reasons. Uh, the first is that today is also the United Nations Day for what they call an International Day for the Prevention of Violent Extremism and International Day against the use of child soldiers. Uh, but there are also two more important uh, events why this day is very important. The second one being this is also the birth anniversary of Charles Darwin, someone who gave the material outlook to the world that to all of us, in fact, there is only one uh, ancestor for the living beings. Uh, and third, what we are doing in India is we are also observing the birth uh, anniversary of Guru Ravidas, who has preached extensively, of course, from a very spiritual angle, saying that there is only one God and we all are equal, and led movements against caste oppression for equality. Now, if you club all these three, why are you witnessing violence? Whereas science is proving that we all have a common ancestor, we have the same inheritance. Despite that, what is it that the division leads up to? And so, our material philosophers and the spiritual philosophers have made this time and again very clear that the future for all of us to live happily has to be based on very strong foundations and fundamentals of love. Unfortunately, what we have seen across the globe just the past year, the way more than 50,000 people were killed in Gaza, children were also not spared. And who are these forces who are fueling uh, large industry to spread extremism, hate, and also fueling through massive capital investments uh, into into arms and ammunitions. That has actually made the planet itself a very uh, unsafe place. And as we all know, that violent extremism, and I would also like to reach to the to a very strong interconnection the way we are building our cities, because most of this violence is taking place in the urban world. So, is it the design? Of course, we all know that this is being fueled by large global players. But what needs to be done at the city level, I think that is also something very important. So, we all know that violent extremism fueled by hatred and misinformation has devastated communities worldwide. It not just tears apart families, it destroys their livelihoods and fosters fear where there should be hope. And to combat it, what needs to be done? I think what needs to be done is a massive scale in which we uh, envisage our future, on invest in education. Dialogue is, I think, an essential element in the cities, which unfortunately the structures in which we are building our exclusionary model of cities is completely ruining and robbing dialogue, and of course inclusivity. Because if there's no inclusivity, if the cities tend to be segregated and only for the rich, then we can imagine there is extreme form of exclusion. Of course, radicalization is another important that needs to be seen with youth being empowered and addressing our social inequalities and fostering a culture of peace. But I think at the same time, we must also not forget that the innocent victims are children, who are also not just forced to war, but we've seen how uh, very young children, very young people and children were bombarded in Gaza and different parts of the world. And therefore, uh, what is important is uh, that to articulate it in the city space. I think what is also important is that to understand and recognize that cities are hubs of diversity. I mean, everyone is a migrant in the city. I mean, someone has migrated few hours ago, someone few months, years, and maybe 1 or 2 centuries ago. So that diversity is very important, and these are also hubs of opportunity. I've written recently on it why, despite the extreme exclusionary form, still cities continue to be magnets, especially in South Asia, and of course hubs of governance. So, what kind of governance should we look at? And social inequalities, in the face of social inequalities, and also the risk of radicalization. Because what we are seeing is, especially in the Indian context and also in the South Asian context, there is this mobilization of the majority, which can lead to devastation, but also some radicalization risks that are there. And of course, organized crime. As you come to my state, Himachal Pradesh, we've seen how young people are being now doped into new substances, and every day we are witnessing young children dying uh, because of the consumption of these substances. So I think there is an urban responsibility, and cities have to prioritize. I mean, in the Kerala Urban Commission, once the report is out, we will be able to share more. But we need to prioritize youth engagement, and I think there's a framework of the Strong Cities Network that also needs to be seen. How that framework can be incorporated in the cities, that speaks of social inclusion and community resilience to prevent radicalization. Local governments definitely have to invest, not just local but provincial, in education, vocational training, and cultural programs. So there's a cultural exchange program. I remember in my young days, seeing Ramayana used to be the most sought cultural spaces, and we used to occupy a seats to watch. Uh, Ramayana. I'm sure in South Asia we have such cultural spaces, but now with the new advent of technology, these cultural spaces are shrinking, and the new technology, instead of mobilizing people and bringing them together, is actually creating new spaces which are extremely nuclear. So there is another challenge that the cities must look. How do they create more spaces to share stories of the elderly with the children, which is completely gone? And of course, strengthening law enforcement and community trust. Exploitation of the children in urban spaces must be seen through a larger sense, that leads to trafficking, gang recruitment. Also, we've seen in some of the parts. We know this famous Vishnoi gang in the country, and how the person, in fact, I was one of the persons who went for the election campaign, not for his election campaign, someone else's in Chandigarh, and we know the precarity that exists. So, safe spaces, of course, safe spaces means how you design architecturally your cities, youth centers, and mentorship programs, bringing in that intergenerational and intersectionality in the cities. Many civil society groups, political groups need to come back. Religious institutions have to talk to each other, be it Christians, Muslims, or the Hindus, and of course the Sikhs. So peace education, and if you could have some peace committees that would counter extreme narratives, both from the majority and the minority, social and digital media platforms. Else, all the observance what we are witnessing, be it Darwin or Ravidas, I mean, all of them who have taught us, and both from the scientific and the spiritual lens, that we all are one. So if we all are one, there's no space and scope to to spread hatred, or to to build our future on the basis of hatred. But it has to be based on love, passion, compassion, and something that we are trying to do, structuring it in the city spaces through the Kerala Urban Commission. Once that commission is done with the final report, but also not to miss the point that there are some international agencies like the Strong Cities Network and other forces that have to be more active, belligerent, uh, for a secure future. Thanks.